morning. Good morning. Welcome to the International Mastermind Think and Grow Rich show. My name is Galen Bingham. I am the leadership strategist, and I get to be one of your key hosts for today. I am so excited about this conversation. We're going to be talking about the subject of desire, which is really kind of the starting point of this entire philosophy that we've been talking about. And just really, really excited to get into that with you. And then also our guest is an amazing lady. I had an opportunity to meet her face to face in person at the annual meeting a few weeks back. But she is an international speaker. She is one of the cornerstone thought leaders for diversity, equity, inclusion. She has spoken all over the world, most of the states in the United States, as well as 7 different countries. And all of the major political parties call her to ask her, how do I make sure that I'm approaching diversity, equity, and inclusion in the right way? And she's going to be with us today to talk about Think and Grow Rich as it pertains to groups, because she's also a mastermind group leader. So I'm just really, really excited to have Carole Copeland Thomas with us. And I would love to just have a one-on-one conversation with her, but my guest won't allow it. So I've got to bring my guest in to get this conversation started. And we're going to start with none other than the speaker who only requires one name. Pegeen, how are you doing this morning?
Oh my gosh, I am so excited. Do you know that Carol inspires me? Carol, I've known for decades, and this woman is a powerhouse, and she just really makes the world seem smaller, connected. And she's exciting because she's doing work that really changes lives. And I want to talk about some of the things that I know is about the power of masterminding and leading mastermind groups and how this book applies to that, because oftentimes everybody receives it as an individual book to read. But if you are leading masterminds, if your goal is to lead masterminds, this book really is a framework for you to be able to be successful at. And I want to, in the desire chapter, I'm going to read over here. He writes on page 34, he writes, resolve yourself to kindle in your mind the fire of hope, faith, courage, and tolerance. And if you're running a mastermind, man, you better start having some hope that you can serve people, that you want people to grow. That's why you're leading and starting one. The faith that you're going to be continued to be directed so that that mastermind truly uplifts and moves people to a whole nother level in their lives that they never imagined before. The courage to persevere, to keep on going. Running a mastermind, I lead several of them, requires constant courage to never give up. Things happen, and you have to keep on moving forward. And tolerance. I love this word about tolerance that he writes, because tolerance, with a mastermind, you bring a wide group of people who don't think like you, people who don't act like you, people that sometimes don't believe like you, but you are all focused on one very clear goal. And that's what a mastermind does. So I'm very excited to have this conversation, Galen. I'm so excited to be able to have the deep conversation about groups, masterminding, and using this principle of desire, because that's where it all starts, right?
That's it. That's it. And again, I love the focus on groups because you can go to a number of different places to get an individual focus on Think and Grow Rich. We certainly do that here as well, focus on the individual. I know I talk about the individual benefits of being steeped in this Think and Grow Rich philosophy, but I don't know of any other place where you can get a focus on the group and how do you do a better job of leading your mastermind groups. And this is the brainchild of the only person that can get me to get up at 5:30 on a Saturday morning without the Flintstones, and that is Miss Ann McNeil. So, Miss Master Wealth Builder, join us.
Oh, what a wonderful day to have my friend Carol on. I am so excited. And when you think about this entire principle of desire, when you mix it with a mastermind group of accountability, Carol and I met through the National Speakers Association years ago. I'm not going to go back as far as Begin said decades, but it it was a while ago. But anyway, we also reconnected through the Black NSA $1 million mastermind that I was coaching, and still almost 10 years later, I'm still coaching that group. But what I love about you, Carol, is that you are consistent and you've always talked about diversity way before it was a new buzzword. So I'm going to claim you as the mother of diversity, DEI. And as we talk about your mastermind group today, I cannot think of a better group that has had the longevity that it has had to share in this conversation. So, Galen, let's get this conversation started.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you before we bring our guest on, I want to talk just a little bit about my personal experience with her because Miss Ann, you talked about this just a little bit. There are certain people at times when the work that you're doing, the rest of the world seems to catch up with you. And I believe that that's the case here. Ms. Thomas was doing DEI work before I think it was called DEI. And she was just doing this work because it was something that she was passionate about. And then the rest of the world decided that this was important, that this was a focus. Who can we go to guide us in this area? And there was only one person that showed up in all the spaces that they were searching, and that is this young lady that we're going to be speaking with here shortly. I am a gigantic fan of her Facing Fear TEDx. If you are looking to be inspired, if you're looking to be motivated, I can't think of a better 17 minutes to spend on YouTube than checking her out. But you don't have to go there. You don't have to leave. You don't have to go anywhere because we've got Ms. Carole Copeland Thomas with us today. And Carol, I would love to have you join us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Galen and Pagine and my very dear friend, Ann McNeil. I'm excited to be here this morning. Woo woo! It's snowing outside, but it's okay. Warm in our hearts, very much so.
Well, I would love to just start this conversation because in a few minutes we're going to ask Pagine to talk to us about all of the principles and how they work together. But just talk a little bit about the different groups that you've been a part of with masterminding, the different groups that you have led with the concepts of masterminding to kind of give everyone this in the audience kind of an idea of how this what this conversation is going to be about.
Pagine referenced it, and Ann also referenced it. I am a longtime member of the National Speakers Association, knocking on the door of 30 years. And in that time, I have experienced a number of different networking opportunities and groups that I have been a part of locally and then on a national basis that then formed this mastermind concept. And this is actually, I had read Think and Grow Rich, but my mastermind experience, in terms of me experientially so, preceded me rereading the book. So I had been a part of a couple of mastermind groups, basically working with other speakers who were part of the National Speakers Association. And as happens, it just evolved. There was an evolution that took place between those who uh, were going in a certain direction and then moving in a new direction. And with that comes change. So I've been a part of diverse mastermind groups with Black and white and Latino combinations thereof. But ultimately, in 2007, which I'll talk to you more about as we continue this conversation, I formed a wonderful alliance with three other women, three other African American women, who at that time were all part of NSA, the National Speakers Association. And at a conference that we attended, one of our national conferences that we attended, we said, we, for a lot of reasons, need to really band together, structure ourselves in a way so that we can get more business, scale our businesses, support each other, and move in a positive direction. And one thing led to another. So in 2007, Ebony Speakers was born, and it is still very much in operations.
Oh, fantastic. That's a fantastic story. And yeah, we definitely want to get into how do you maintain the chemistry, because Napoleon Hill is big about there needs to be a focus on the chemistry of the group in order for it to be successful. We definitely want to get into that. Before we do, Pagine, I'd love to come back to you and just get you to share with us how all of these principles come together, because it's easy when we come here each week and we talk about one individual principle. It's easy for us to think that that principle is all that's involved, but there are several other principles and they kind of knit together. So talk to us a little bit about how that entire philosophy works together.
I will. And one of the things that I want people to be thinking about as they listen to the 13 principles is, how do you apply the 13 principles to your mastermind group? How do you apply the 13 principles to grow your mastermind group? And how do you apply those 13 principles for you personally to be the leader of a mastermind group that enables you to grow, expand, and really thrive as a mastermind leader? So let's listen to the 13 principles, but put on your head, I'm a leader of a mastermind, and see what you get from these 13 principles.
Number one is desire. Number one is desire. Napoleon Hill said that everything starts with a burning desire, a compelling reason for doing what it is we do. Step two is faith, having belief in our ability to attain that which we desire. Step three is what we call autosuggestion. Autosuggestion simply means being very intentional about the things that we are pouring into our thoughts, into our brains, and into our consciousness. Our brains, our minds will receive everything automatically, but we have to work extra hard to make sure that the positive things are what we are feeding ourselves, because those positive thoughts are going to turn into positive actions. Step number 4 is specialized knowledge. No one person knows everything, even about whatever their particular area of expertise might be. And the value of the MasterMind principle is using the specialized knowledge of other people. Step number 5 is imagination, the workshop of the mind. Everything starts with our imagination and our thoughts, the burning desire to transform those thoughts into our reality. In order to do that, we have to take a look at step 6, which is organized planning. That is how we crystallize our desire into action, organizing ourselves. Having the thought and not acting on the thought isn't going to get us anywhere. We have the thought, we go through the organized planning to transform that thought into action. Step number 7 is decision. What Napoleon Hill said is the mastery of procrastination. Napoleon Hill said that the antidote to procrastination is simply to make a decision and then move on that decision. Step 8 is persistence. We have to have a sustained effort which is induced by our faith in order to achieve our goals. One of Napoleon Hill's books I love, even the title, 3 Feet from Gold. Those people who became rich during the gold rush in the wild, wild west days didn't do that because they were necessarily smarter or had better information than anyone else. It's because they stayed just a little bit longer. Sometimes people left when they were just literally 3 feet from gold. So hanging in there, being persistent, is step number 8. Step number 9, the power of the mastermind, the driving force. None of us can accomplish anything on our own. Everybody, I don't care who you are, from the most prominent person to the person who might be considered the lowest on the totem pole, everybody has someone who helped them get to where they are. And the power of the mastermind is being able to use those influences around us, use the thoughts, use the knowledge, use the exploration of other people to help us in achieving our goal. Step number 10, the mystery of sex transmutation. This title can be a little confusing, but essentially what the mystery of sex transmutation means is that we oftentimes in our society think of sex as being purely physical. It is absolutely physical, but what Napoleon Hill teaches us is that sex also has an emotional element, and that sex is the strongest of our desires. That if we can take our sexual energy, transform that into positive, creative influences, it can propel us to new heights. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking about the mystery of step 10, which is sex transmutation. Step number 11 is the subconscious mind, which Napoleon Hill tells us is the connecting leap between our human mind and the infinite intelligence, the source of all thought, the source of all creativity. Conscious mind, we spent some time talking about how we use that through the influence of autosuggestion and what we're feeding into our mind. Step number 12, which is the brain, the broadcasting and receiving station of thought. Final step number 13, the sixth sense, the door to the temple of wisdom. This is the final step through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. The principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles.
Well, there you have it. I just never grow old of hearing or grow tired of hearing all of those principles together in one place, and definitely encourage you if you are feeling inspired by listening to those principles and you want to get this inspiration each week. I'm going to encourage you to subscribe. We've got our YouTube channel. As a matter of fact, I want you to subscribe right now, and if you're not subscribed, I want you to put in the chat what it would take for you to subscribe. What is it that you would need in order to subscribe to the YouTube channel? It's called MasterMind, Think and Grow Rich Mastermind Live. And if you are subscribed, put into the chat, subscribe. I just want to see that word, subscribe. And we're going to get into this conversation. That's how you join the community. We've got people from our community already joining in. Dr. Raquel Rubin is in, and she is the first to answer our trivia question that there are 6 steps to riches that are described in the desire area. I see Ms. All-Purpose Misty Campbell already joining us. Haven't seen you in a while, so it's great to see you virtually here. Imelda Wallace, I see, and there's a lot of Delta Sigma Theta love going on in the chat. So maybe that has something to do with our guest. So I'm going to bring in another Delta lady, Ms. Carole Copeland Thomas, bring you back on. And we're going to kick off this conversation because one of the areas that Napoleon Hill talks about is that everyone seems to wish for riches, but wishing does not bring riches. There's some work that you've got to do. There's some mindset work that you've got to do. And so I suspect, like me, when people join your mastermind group, they're wishing for riches. They're wishing for health. They're wishing for a variety of things. But as you lead a mastermind group or as you're part of a mastermind group, somehow you've got to inspire them that there's some mindset work that has to go into making that wish a reality. Talk to us a little bit about, your experience with leading groups in this philosophy.
Well, I have to give a big shout out, first of all, to my Delta sisters who are here in the chat room, including Soror Imelda and obviously Soror Ann. Also, my Ebony speakers, because 3 of us are Deltas, both Michelle, Nancy Lewis, Michelle Portia, Nancy Lewis, and myself. But we are diverse because Deborah Lewis is a proud AKA. So we look at things from all perspectives. And some of you who may not be in the Black community are saying, what? Didn't you leave that behind in college? In the Black community, with what they call the Divine Nine, these are the 9 sororities and fraternities that started way back when, over 100 years ago. The philosophy was you started in college or you pledged as a graduate of college, and then you remained a lifelong member of that particular sorority and fraternity. So that's why we're doing that. And again, big shout out, because we lost our national president 2 days ago, and so that's been really heart rendering and heartfelt. So all props and big tribute to Cheryl Hickman, who was a fabulous new president of Delta Sigma Theta. Getting back to desire, I love this chapter. Having worked with Anne, having been in Black NSA, and having created my affirmation statement that I have been using and modifying and changing since I think it was 2017 when I first started the affirmation statement mantra. So that was now almost 5 years ago. It's a way where I'm looking at the whole concept of working with a mastermind group, but also putting these parameters in place and the infrastructure in place that is based on Think and Grow Rich, that really sustains me, sustains my colleagues that I work with, and puts a realistic, positive spin on life. Because we all know stuff happens in life. I mean, you read this chapter on desire and you hear about Napoleon Hill's son, born with no ears, yet he could hear because of the desire of his parents implanting that into him so that he believed he could do just about anything. So I look at that affirmation statement that I read this morning, that I modified a couple of days ago, but how that sustains me. And I look at that in the context of Ebony Speakers and how we work and grow together in that same light.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, as I said earlier, you and I met for the first time, as far as having a conversation for the first time at the annual meeting. And one of the things that we talked about when we were on a panel together is that no one does anything for a sustained amount of time unless they are realizing some sort of benefit, unless they see some sort of benefit of being a part. What are some things that you do to maintain the benefit of being part of a mastermind group for some of the other members that you might be leading?
As Pagine had said, there are different types of mastermind groups. We know the International Mastermind Association is made up of groups that are paid and unpaid. Ebony Speakers is a closed group for women working together in our daily lives to excel and advance our lives and also our businesses. We don't pay each other, so there's no monetization of it. But there certainly are incentives to sustain ourselves. And I guess that's what I want to really reference. We've been together now 15 years, since 2007. We, with the exception of this year, meet every month, or at least last year, 2021, where we took the summer off for the first time. Typically, we meet in the summer as well. Once a month, come together and work accordingly. And for us, it was initially about our businesses and how can we, back in 2007, use principles like desire and commitment and those other kind of heady words that really make a big difference. How can we use that to sustain and grow our business? We realized that it was beyond business, that there was a personal and a social component. Mentioned to you about sororities. Pagine is talking about sororities in the Latin community as well. Heads up for that. So we're looking not just at business, but also the social interaction and the social connection that we have. That sustained us because our businesses have morphed and changed. One of our members is semi-retired, but still has this philosophy of growth and development. So you quickly realize in order to sustain yourself in a mastermind group, you may start on one path, but ultimately there may be other components, there may be social components, there may be emotional components, there may be cultural components that become as important as the original business task that you have. I just, there are things that have happened in my life where I have been fed and empowered by my Ebony Speakers more than once. And that's where you know that this is the group that's going to stay together for the long haul. Whereas the other groups were great groups, but their focus and their purpose was not enough to sustain us and to move us forward.
Well said. Well said. You know, when I think of mastermind groups, I think of a couple of different people, but Pegeen is one of the people who I get to interact with who has done a number of paid mastermind groups as well as a number of free mastermind groups. So I want to bring her in. So Pegeen, come on in. And like I said, you've done a variety of kinds of mastermind groups for a variety of reasons. What are your thoughts and what are your questions for Ms. Carole Copeland Thomas around how do you make sure that the mastermind group is delivering against the expectation of the members?
You know, Carol just said something there, just I think is so critically important, and that is fed and challenged. So, as a participant, being fed and challenged, as a leader, feeding and challenging the group. And Carol, I just wanted to ask you a couple of things to help me. First off, I'm going to put you on the spot. How come I wasn't invited? To the group. I think of the song Ebony, and Ivory. I would raise my hand. I think that's one of the most important things in the world is to know that it's to really know that you're called to a group, right? You're called to the group. And I wanted to ask you about what's the difference between that group? So you have groups that it's free, you're coming in, you have so many different groups, but you also do paid groups. Can you tell me your perspective, your mindset, especially as it relates to Napoleon Hill? For me, I was sharing before that on page 35, Napoleon Hill shared a poem. And I'm going to read it to you, and I'm going to ask you to tell me from your perspective what that means to you in terms of your monetizing mastermind groups. He wrote, "I bargained with life for a penny, and life would pay me no more. However, I begged at evening when I counted my scanty store. For life is just an employer. He gives you what you ask. But once you have set up the wages, why, you must bear the task. I worked for a menial's hire, only to learn dismayed that any wage I had asked for, life would have willingly paid." Can you share what that means to you regarding your monetization of some of your mastermind groups?
That's a matter of how you think. And if you think small, you'll get small. If you think modestly so, you'll get modestly so. If you think big, you'll get big. And so often in life, we think small. In some mastermind groups, individuals, accountability partners, etc., it depends on how broad the vision is in terms of how we move forward. I haven't been a part of a paid mastermind group, so I can't answer that question. I've just been a part of unpaid, professionally driven mastermind groups, but I would imagine the functionality is very similar in that so often you have, now there are four of us, and we all have strong personalities. You can imagine, four Black women, just all trying to talk at the same time. But there's a level of camaraderie with us, and we've been together as long as we have. There's camaraderie with us where we can support each other, but also give practical advice to each other at the same time. And that's very important to do that. You know, if you're joining a mastermind group, whether it's paid or unpaid, you don't want to join a group that is not going to call you out on your stuff. Sometimes you need that kind of group, whether it's a mastermind group or an accountability. I have a wonderful accountability partner, Robin Thompson, that we've been together for 20 years, again, through the National Speakers Association. But if you can't, it's not sustainable and productive if you are part of a group where you can't have a level of accountability in place, where you can't feed on that and then grow accordingly. So,
Well,
yeah. Mhm.
I want to challenge you a minute. I love you. I'm going to challenge you because you've been doing something on an annual basis for a very long time that has definitely fed a community and challenged your sponsors, the people that attend your annual diversity conference. And I'm going to ask you, so in that diversity conference, do you have people that you meet with to prepare for that conference?
We have speakers. We have many speakers who are there either speaking to the large group, or in some instances, when we were meeting face to face, they would have smaller groups that they would actually address. So speaking to the preparing the speakers and working with them is certainly very important in order for the conferences to succeed. They're now virtual. I have to say, in November 2020, talking about desire and just having no limits, because this was our first conference in this instance online through the Zoom platform. I had, because there were no limits, I had 62 speakers that came from 12 or 13 countries on six of the seven continents. And everybody was live except three I had to pre-record. So I was dealing with different time zones. And it was amazingly crazy, but it all worked. It all worked together.
And I'm gonna so what I'm thinking of you as Andrew Carnegie and Rockefeller that said, called the people that helped them to create their businesses as part of their mastermind. How many people did you have helping you, guiding you, giving you advice, supporting you? And do you consider them part of your mastermind to create that event?
I have a wonderful team of volunteers who I've worked with for many years. So that's part of that. Mastermind groups, and actually this 2020 conference that I referenced, we also had our conference in November of 2021, but the Ebony speakers were a part of the 2020 conference, and they've been a part of other conferences too. So I'd say I have different pockets of people, colleagues who support my endeavors, whether I talk with them weekly, monthly, or yearly. So different constituents who actually support the efforts. And yeah, the Multicultural Symposium series is now in its 14th year. That's kind of hard to believe, but it is. My conferences started then. I actually have Black History breakfasts that preceded it. So I've been working in this space now for 30 years, putting on events that help and excel and empower individuals, community leaders, activists, and business executives.
And I love that you surround yourself with informal masterminds to be able to achieve your goals. Short term in that moment, let me lead with my vision and I'm going to bring people in. And I know that Ann McNeil is one of those people that you bring in to discuss,
Yes.
feed and challenge,
Yes. She's been
And
one of my speakers too, my keynote speakers at my Black History breakfast. And oh, I'll never forget her coming in with her toolbox. And that was the setup for her speech. Oh, yes.
so Carole, that's the first time when I first met Ann. I was at a small business event put on by UPS, an intimate group of people, and there was Ann walking in with her toolbox and sitting on the stage, and I was like, God, that's heavy that she's carrying around. And we've been friends ever since. So, Ann, I really want to bring you in because you've known Carole for a long time. And this concept of being a group leader, surrounding yourself, creating a mastermind team of the people that support you, being able to be visionaries in terms of what you achieve. I'm really curious about you and Carole, how you connect and how you use this concept of mastermind, even if it's informal, with each other.
Well, what Carol and I have been able to do over the years is to realize that there is a larger vision. As we met through the National Speakers Association, and then later Carol participated in the, actually, Carol and I, oh, yes, Carol and I, and our dear friend that has gone on before us, we're also in a mastermind group, the three of us. Wow, Carol. Wow.
That's right. Shirley Burke.
Yes, 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 the three of us. And that came out of the mastermind, $1 Million Mastermind for Black NSA. Excuse me, like I was saying, I was coaching. But the realization, though, King, going to your question, what Carol and I have come to realize is that there is a larger vision of accountability. And like she said, you really want to be in a mastermind group of individuals that are willing to hold you accountable for whatever you say, not they say, but whatever you say, you're interested in doing. And I'd like to share something actually from Napoleon Hill where we're talking about a larger vision when it comes to mastermind groups of accountability. And that larger vision, he shares whatever version of the book you're using, but he talks about the dreamers. And then he begins to list different individuals that were dreamers. And I'd like to suggest, Carol, that I'm going to add you to the list, right? Napoleon Hill talked about Columbus, and we all know the story of Columbus and the fact that he was a dreamer. He talked about Henry Ford being a dreamer and the fact that as we think about, the failures that we all experience, that they really are consisting of a seed or seeds of success if we just don't quit. He talked about Lincoln, a dreamer, another dreamer, and what he's done, Marconi, and many, many others. But Carol, I'd like to suggest to our listeners today, and the more I think about and reread your resume, the queen of the mother, you can choose whether you want mother or queen of DE&I, because it is now becoming like the word mastermind, if you will, becoming, so popular and everybody's using it. But my question for you, though, what does the future look like and I'm going to call you a dreamer, because I do believe that you have a dream inside of you relative to what you envision you'd like to see, whether you call it DE&I, diversity, whatever you want to call it, in terms of that vehicle and that platform being a way to make a major difference in how we're viewed by others, but also how we view ourselves.
I'm going to have to go back and sort of stack the answer.
Okay, perfect.
You're asking about dreaming, and I'm looking at my version of Think and Grow Rich, and the sentence that said the oak sleeps in the acorn, and the bird waits in the egg, and in the highest vision of a soul, a walking angel stirs. Dreams are the seedlings of reality, and oftentimes dreams and visions can come out of tragedy and peril. And this is not doom and gloom, but walk with me with this.
Yes.
Back in 1997, my 17-year-old son was killed in an automobile accident. That was absolutely horrific. Yet I think about my NSA friends who just were with me the entire time, my local chapter members with NSA New England and national members as well. And I had to speak like 3 weeks after my son died. Bob Danzig, who's now passed away, who was the president and CEO of Hearst newspapers, was at the NSA meeting. I sat at his table by chance. I was bawling my eyes out. He consoled me and helped me to deliver the kind of speech that I needed. At the same time, what happened to my son had affected everybody in my family, his twin sister, my older daughter, my former husband, everybody, my brother, my sister-in-law, my niece, my nieces, my nephew. It was just a horrific time. And then some 11 months later, my mother died in part from a broken heart because her only grandson had passed away. This was a young man who would have been a full scholarship recipient at Morehouse College, wanted to go to law school and be a lawyer like my brother. I mean, just a real high energy kid, very social, etc. But this is where I'm headed with this. So that happened in June of 1997. And then my mother almost immediately got sick in Detroit, my hometown. So I ended up driving back and forth month after month after month to see about her. My brother and sister-in-law were in Detroit, did a fabulous job with taking care of her. Absolutely fabulous. But I wanted to also do my part. And then comes January when it's just not looking good for her at all. And in the midst of all that, just like in the book Think and Grow Rich, bam, a vision statement came into my head. Now, I belong to a church that practices visioning in January. It's Bethel AME Church here in Boston area. And my co-pastors, who are medical doctors and physicians as well, Doctors Ray and Gloria Hammond, are really big on this. And so I was in the atmosphere, and this probably will answer Pagin's question also. I was in the atmosphere where it was conducive for these kind of things to happen. So bam, January 1998. I mean, it's just bad, just not looking great. But the seed was there. And that's where my vision statement was born and is today what it was in 1998. And it says, Carole Copeland Thomas and C. Thomas and Associates are content providers. That's my mission statement. But the vision statement says Carole Copeland Thomas will capture the essence of the human spirit by developing messages of hope, interconnection, purpose, courage, and faith to people throughout the world. And when those words came together, I said, wow, what? I'm doing some traveling, certainly doing a lot of traveling domestically, but internationally, I want to do more traveling internationally. And it's like the seed was planted with that vision statement. And so now I've worked in some 9 countries. I've traveled to 45 states. I've been to more countries in terms of travel, but I've worked in 9 countries. My most recent experience in terms of capturing the opportunity in the midst of a pandemic, because I had been on Zoom for 5-6 years, I was able to jump on and easily navigate things. But 2 weeks ago, I had the good pleasure of developing and working and delivering a vision workshop to executive women in Japan. And we did it all from my hotel room as I was preparing for the next day of the IMA annual meeting. And we're now corresponding back and forth on another platform as a result of that particular workshop. And I challenged them to dream. I challenged them to dream. So see, it all sort of fits together. I mean, it looks like, wow, she's doing all that, but it all fits together. And sometimes your biggest mess, your biggest failure, the stuff that just happens to you, as we've seen in Think and Grow Rich, can be your launching pad for a greater opportunity in life.
Carol, very, very, very well said. I know that Galen and Paquin are sitting sitting in the wings, just chatting away, wanting to get into this conversation, because what you just did is to really wrap up the words of Napoleon Hill when he talked about the dreamer. Now, of course, there was no way that I could know that, but again, I think that all things still work together for good, and there are no coincidences. I mean, from our meeting to our adding a larger vision as dreamers, as we all are on this platform, and even those who are listening and watching, we do want to remind all of you to remember to subscribe. But I want to take just a moment as we're talking about a larger vision and talk about the beta test that we're doing as a part of the International Mastermind Association. And for those of you that's interested in being a part of that, it's still open, free. Yes, you can go to internationalmasterminders with an s.com/group mastermind. Again, you can go to International Masterminders with an s/group mastermind and register to become a part of our beta test. And eventually we're going to ask you to qualify, because again, this is where we are creating best practices for mastermind groups. This International Mastermind Beta Test is for group leaders. And if you're interested in being a part of this podcast, you can also let us know that also. All right. So, Galen, the theme.
So we had a lot of incredible conversation about the variety of mastermind groups. We've talked about the mastermind group we're part of with National Speakers Association. We've talked about the mastermind that you're doing with your own Ebony Speakers. We've talked about masterminding with your with sorority, with Delta Sigma Theta, and fraternities, including the greatest fraternity of all, Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. So Carole, I want to come back to you and just kind of get your perspective on this annual meeting that you and I met for the first time. What was the value of attending the annual meeting, being around other like-minded people? What did you get from that experience? And I know that that was not your first one. That was just the first one that you and I happened to connect at. But what's your perspective on the annual meeting?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I have Kappas in my family, my father and my brother, and my former husband. So lots of Kappas there, right? And my grandfather was an Alpha, former brother-in-law was a Q, so we can just go on and on with the Divine Nine. Right. I'm going to be honest with you. This was my third mastermind group. And like so many other people, and it's referenced in Think and Grow Rich, if you let your naysaying voice control you, it'll limit and stop what you do and your growth. Now, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and I'm being super cautious in terms of travel and where I'm going. I have not had COVID. I don't want COVID. I'm fully vaccinated and boosted, and I practice social distance, and whenever I go out, I wear a mask. And I had not traveled on a plane in 2 years, in almost 2 years. And then I found myself in December, between December and the annual meeting, making 3 trips, bump, 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 all in a row in 30 days. So I said to myself, oh my gosh, shouldn't I just stay home? That's the little voice that this very cautionary and wants to protect you, etc., and tells you all the reasons why you shouldn't do what you should do. And then I pushed forward and said, no, I need to be there because of the experience and what it will give me. And so, yeah, booked a ticket, booked the room, got there. Horrific snowstorm that took place the day I was supposed to leave. Had to just make all other kind of plans, but I actually got there. So there are always going to be obstacles. There are always going to be things that are going to be in your way. And if you're not careful, you will talk yourself out of a great opportunity like the Mastermind annual meeting that we attended. It was a wonderful collection of individuals and group leaders. We had homework assignments. We had to create an annual report, which we do every year. And again, I had attended before, and I attended the Zoom version last year. But Galen, in terms of the annual report, he can really talk to you about his version because he created quite a professional version. We had a survey, a letter to ourselves. So there are things you have to do in order to prepare yourself for the meeting and also to conduct the meeting. It was inspirational. It was, for me, an affirmation that I was doing the right thing. I was at the right place. And this was a way for me to recalibrate where I wanted to go in life, and also sort of set the kind of theme that I have for 2022. And my theme this time is focus, faith, and follow up. And so those are the areas that I'm working on in conjunction with the work that I'm continuing to do with the annual meeting. So it's a great place, exchange of information. Just I was a table host, so I had a chance to meet great people at my table. I love the group picture that we took outside. So safely did outside. Food is great at the hotel. Anne is always very inspirational. And if you haven't met her 5-year-old granddaughter, Raja, woo, 5 going on 45 years old. Man, she is a humdinger in terms of how at that age, she already is beginning to practice the Think and Grow Rich skills because of her mother and her grandmother and her aunt.
I'll tell you,
And her big brother.
there are a few things more inspiring to me from that meeting than watching kids a third of my age doing work that I should be doing, that I could be doing, that I wish I were doing earlier, but they've already got that baked into just how they see life. And I would encourage everyone to do a favor for themselves and make plans to attend the annual meeting, typically the first week in the year. So I want to bring back on Pagine, and actually Pagine and Miss Ann, and just ask you guys as we come to a close of this conversation, what are some key things? And I'll start with you, Pagine. What are some key ahas that you captured from this conversation? And then how can people get a hold of you if they want to learn more about your individual masterminds and just learn more about what you do? Pagine,
Is
yeah,
can you hear me okay?
yes.
What I'm walking away is consistency, the courage to keep on keeping on, and the long-term outcomes of that consistency of showing up. When you're hearing Carole speak about being in a group since 1997, creating some of her mission statements, and of course when we hear Anne talking about where she is, and certainly I've reflected on myself of the consistency, the ability. And the two things were popping up to my head, which was one, a reminder when Carole talked about Anne's granddaughter, the reminder that Anne has shared that the book that she reads and incorporates reading to her children is this book as a story rather than other storybooks, to really embed that in mind. It just made me reflect, wow, we can do that. The second thing that I know is I want you to all join Pagine Club. Pagine, Pegine.club. And that is a way for you to be inspired on a daily basis, get short information plugged into your ear in our podcast. You always can follow me and join me at Pegine.club. And then the second thing is just always look up Power Women Worldwide, because there you'll learn to lead powerfully, you'll learn to sell, you'll learn to speak confidently, and you'll grow confidently in all aspects of your life. So that's how you meet me, see me, and thank you, Carole, so much for this inspiring show.
All right, Miss Ann, how do people get a hold of you, and what did you capture from your from this conversation with one of your longtime friends?
First things first, I have pages here of notes. So let me just give you a couple of points that I wrote. Carol, phenomenal. And Pekine hit the nail on the head. As a matter of fact, I found myself gazing into to the camera and writing notes feverishly as takeaways. And what you have helped me to do, though, Carol, is to think about the best practices. That's the big thing I got. I'm sure I have the notes. You talked about a philosophy, and having an affirmation statement to start, not just really as an individual, but it's also required as a best practice. And I have it in the book behind me, How to Start and Run Effective Mastermind Group, but also as a mastermind group. All of our groups should really have a group affirmation. And then the International Mastermind Association, we also have a International Mastermind Association affirmation. And you also talked about the fact of meeting monthly, business form, the personal focus, social focus, as components to sustain you. And even though you started out, strictly business as a part of your mastermind group, it became about the total life. Now, I put in the chat, I'm not sure if any of you saw it, but I wanted to ask you if we had a couple of minutes to have you share when you start wrapping up, Carol, if you can share the book your group wrote. And I do think your group has a website also. And so these are some best practices I really would like to encourage our listeners to consider for your own mastermind group. Now, if you are interested in having greater clarity in every area of your life, you can connect with me by going to annmcneil.com/coaching. We do a clarity mastermind group. We only meet once a month, but we do exercises every day because it is about getting the clarity that you need to achieve, as Carol said, that mission and vision and the affirmation that you have for your own life. And I will say this again, only connect with me if you are interested in having greater clarity, because sometimes we say yay, yay, and it's nay, nay. All right, again, Galen.
All right. And Miss Carole Copeland Thomas, how can people get a hold of you if they want to get more of this inspiration that they've heard today?
Thank you so much. I've just enjoyed my time with you, Galen, Pagine, and Anne. Oh, we could have just gone on for much, much longer. You can go two places. Number one, our mastermind has a website, and it's ebonyspeakers.com. That's speakers with an S, ebonyspeakers.com. Go there. We've got lots of blog articles. The book that we collaboratively wrote together, Real Women, Real Issues, Positive Collaborations for Business Success, is there as well. And my website is my name, CaroleCopelandThomas.com. There are other websites, the Multicultural Symposium series you can get to through Carole Copeland Thomas with an E, Carole with an E, CaroleCopelandThomas.com. I've enjoyed it today. Think and Grow Rich is the way to go. Dreaming, dreaming, dreaming is so important. In order to reach your goals, you have to have a dream and you have to have that desire.
Well, fantastic. Well, this has been a great show. I just really enjoyed spending more time with Carole Copeland Thomas. My name is Galen Bingham. Please join us each and every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern, where we talk about some element of Think and Grow Rich as it pertains to mastermind groups. If you want to follow me, please go to Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership on any podcast platform. I double dog dare you to try us at least once. And we will continue to give you straight talk you can't get anywhere else. That's it for this week.
Subscribe.
Please do all you can, all you can to join us each and every week. One of the best ways to make sure that you don't miss out on this conversation is to hit that subscribe button. So right underneath where you're watching this, there should be a subscribe button, the big word subscribe. Hit subscribe, hit the little bell, and you will get a notification every time we do this each and every week. Until next time, take care.